Imagine a world where cities exploded overnight, where billionaires were minted by the dozen, and where politics was a dirty, dirty game. This wasn't a fantasy novel. This was America's Gilded Age. The man who named the era, Mark Twain, called it gilded for a reason. On the surface, it was golden and glittering, but underneath, it was all cheap metal and rot. And nowhere was that rot more obvious than in the halls of power. In this series, we're diving headfirst into this turbulent time. Today, we're tackling the craziest arena of them all, Gilded Age politics. We're talking about puppet masters pulling the strings of entire cities, a system so corrupt it led to a president's assassination, and a government policy that aimed to systematically erase a culture. It's a story of greed, power, and the struggle for America's soul. So, before we expose the political grime, do us a solid and gavel that like button and subscribe. Trust me, it's a vote you won't regret. Welcome to the age of the political machine. These weren't machines of metal and steam, but of men, money, and votes. And they ran America's booming cities. Here's how it worked. The city was divided into wards, run by a ward boss. His job was to know everyone, and I mean everyone, especially the new immigrants flooding in from Ireland, Italy, and Germany. To a family that just arrived with nothing, the machine was a lifeline. It provided jobs, buckets of coal in the winter, food, and legal aid. All the boss asked for in return was your loyalty at the ballot box, often multiple times on the same day in a practice called repeat voting. And at the top of the biggest, baddest machine of them all, New York's Tammany Hall, sat this man, William Boss Tweed. He perfected the system and turned corruption into an art form. Tweed and his Tweed ring were masters of graft and kickbacks. A courthouse that should have cost $250,000, Tweed's final bill to the city was a cool $13 million. That's over $300 million today. The difference went straight into the pockets of the ring.
The way to have power is to take it.
He was so brazen, he felt untouchable. But he couldn't escape the pen of this man, cartoonist Thomas Nast. Nast's brilliant, scathing political cartoons in Harper's Weekly were like viral memes of the 1870s. He exposed the ring's corruption to the masses, creating simple, powerful images that everyone could understand.
Stop them damned pictures. My constituents can't read, but they can see them damned pictures.
He was right. The cartoons were devastating. Public outrage exploded, and the law finally closed in. Boss Tweed, the king of New York, died in jail. A broke and broken man. But city-level corruption was just a symptom of a national disease known as the spoils system. For decades, winning an election meant you could fire thousands of federal workers and give those jobs, postmasters, clerks, customs officials, to your friends and biggest donors. Qualifications? Not important. Loyalty was the only resume you needed. By the 1880s, this system had split the Republican Party. The stalwarts, led by Roscoe Conkling, loved the spoils system. The half-breeds, led by James G. Blaine, paid lip service to reform but really just wanted the spoils for themselves. It was a mess. Into this hornet's nest walked President James A. Garfield in 1881. From the moment he took office, he was hounded relentlessly by office seekers. They ambushed him on his way to dinner. They camped outside his office for weeks. One of these men was Charles Guiteau, a disgruntled lawyer and preacher who believed he was owed a prestigious diplomatic post in Paris for writing a single speech for Garfield's campaign. He was mentally unstable and completely delusional. When he was repeatedly turned away, Guiteau's delusion turned to rage. On July 2nd, 1881, he cornered President Garfield in a Washington, D.C. train station and shot him twice in the back. As he was arrested, Guiteau shouted, "I am a stalwart of the stalwarts. Arthur is president now." He fully believed that by killing Garfield, he was helping the stalwart faction and would be rewarded. The nation was horrified. Garfield didn't die immediately. He lingered for 80 agonizing days. In a tragic twist of irony, it wasn't the bullet that killed him, but the doctors. Probing the wound with unsanitized fingers and surgical tools, they introduced a massive infection that ultimately took his life. Garfield's death was the final straw. The man who replaced him, Chester A. Arthur, was a notorious stalwart and product of the spoils system. Everyone expected him to make things worse. But in one of the great surprises of presidential history, Arthur rose to the occasion. He knew the system had to change. In 1883, he championed and signed the Pendleton Civil Service Act. It was a revolutionary idea. Government jobs would now be awarded based on merit, proven through exams. It was the beginning of the end for the spoils system. While politicians battled over jobs and money back east, a different, more tragic political battle was reaching its climax in the American West. With the frontier rapidly closing, the U.S. government abandoned its policy of treating Native American tribes as separate nations. The new goal was forced assimilation. The idea was to destroy tribal culture and absorb Native Americans into white American society. The motto of the Carlisle School, founded by Richard Henry Pratt, laid it bare.
Kill the Indian in him and save the man.
This brutal philosophy was codified in the Dawes Act of 1887. It was a cultural atom bomb. It broke up tribal reservation lands, which were owned communally for generations, and divided them into 160-acre plots for individual families. The government told them to become farmers on land that was often unsuitable for farming. Any surplus land, and there was a lot of it, often the most valuable land, was sold off to white settlers, cattle ranchers, and railroad companies. The result was a catastrophe. The policy shattered tribal governance, traditions, and economic structures. In less than 50 years, Native Americans lost nearly 2/3 of their land base. It was a conquest achieved not with bullets, but with legislation. This policy set the stage for generations of poverty and hardship, a legacy that Native American communities are still fighting to overcome today. The Gilded Age political arena was a spectacle of shocking contrasts. It was a time of rampant corruption and inspiring reform, of cynical power grabs and tragic consequences. It forged a new kind of American government, but left deep scars that we are still dealing with today. But politics was only half the story. While the bosses and reformers battled for control, a different kind of titan was reshaping the country, with steel, oil, and iron. In our next episode, we'll ride the rails of America's explosive economic transformation. You won't want to miss it. Subscribe now and ring that notification bell so you can be the first to know when Part 2 drops. History is never as simple as it seems, and we've got a lot more to uncover. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the Gilded Age.